Hello everyone and welcome back to this course titled as Introduction to Indian Writing in English. We have completed our first unit which had a very beautiful and a very popular poem of Nassim Ezekiel which is named as Night of the Scorpion. Now in this unit, Unit 2, we will deal with another poem as popular as the earlier one. It is titled as Goodbye Party of Miss Pushpatius. It is written by the same poet, Nassim Ezekiel, and we will deal with this poem and will try to look at the various themes and how this poem is proved to be a pioneer into this field of Indian writing in English. Before beginning this poem, I have to again discuss the outcomes which are going to be achieved after this lecture by the students. Employ an insight about the oeuvre of Indian writers. As I told you, that you will be able to understand the depth of the Indian writing. The second thing, compare the historical context in which these texts were written. You would be able to understand that in which historical context these texts were written and how these texts are able to, let's say, explain those historical circumstances and situations. Illustrate the various writing dimensions of Indian writers. Like I told you earlier also, that through this outcome you would be able to understand the dimensions, the depth which Indian writing has and which Indian writers were able to explain with the help of their poems, fictions and non-fictions. The first aspect which I am going to deal in this lecture related to this poem Goodbye Party of Miss Pushpatius is poetic craftsmanship. My dear friends, as all of you know that Nassim Ezekiel is one of the most famous poets into Indian society, into Indian community, into Indian literary world. So we must understand the poetic craftsmanship which Nassim Ezekiel has and how he explains all these things with the help of his, let's say, imageries, symbols, etc. in his poetry. Goodbye Party of Miss Pushpatius is a satirical poem by Nassim Ezekiel. Friends, the earlier poem which we studied, titled as Night of the Scorpion, that was also a satirical poem. It had a pinch of satire about the Indian society. And the same pinch of satire is lying in this poem, Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpatius also. Although the title may seem little bizarre to all of you. How can, let's say, a goodbye party of someone can be converted into a poem? But as all of you know, friends, that Nassim Ezekiel is a very skilled, a very crafted writer, and he knows how to take out a poem from any, let's say, simple incident of life. Nassim Ezekiel satirizes certain Indian customs, traditions and manners in the poem Goodbye Party of Miss Pushpatius. Well, friends, there are some Indian customs, there are some traditions, there are some manners in the Indian society which we follow with blinded eyes because we are looking at them since our childhood. When we were adolescent, we started acting on those customs, traditions and manners. We never thought that they are right or wrong, but somehow we started working on them and they came into our behavior, they came into our nature. And in this way, we never thought critically on those customs, traditions and manners. But here we have a poet among us, Nassim Ezekiel, who was able to explain in this poem, Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpatius, about that change in the society which he want to bring with the help of this poem. It is in the form of a dramatic monologue. Well friends, now you might ask, what is a dramatic monologue? There is a speaker who speaks, explains his ideas, and then there are listeners which we assume are present into that, let's say, group. They are listening silently to the speaker, and thus it becomes a, let's say, dramatic kind of situation where there is a monologue. One person is speaking. Monologue means one person is speaking, but then there are many people who are listening, and they are giving their expressions, their responses, their feedbacks in the form of their body gestures, postures, somewhere in the poem which are explained by the poet. The poem is in free verse, typical of modern poetry. Well friends, I told you that just like the earlier poem, Night of the Scorpion, this poem, Pushpatius, is also written in free verse. Free verse, I told you in the earlier lectures, which has no rhyme, which has no rhythm, and in this way, this poem is also an epitome of modernity. The speaker stands for every speaker in Indian context. Well, I must say that this is the characteristic which brings universality into the works of Nassim Ezekiel. He is the speaker who is the voice of the common Indian people, who talks about Indian context, who talks about Indian situations, who talks about Indian scenario, and who is in true sense a realistic Indian person. He uses free and broken language to share the views and emotions. Well friends, this person Nassim Ezekiel, through his poetry, he uses all kind of free language, and then the language is also broken. But it doesn't mean that the language has no coherence. It has. But the language, the phrases, how they are broken, it suggests the Indian way of thinking into English language, Indian way of speaking English language, and how Indians share views and emotions into Indian way of speaking English. The poet mocks at literal translation. For example, 2-3 days is a literal translation of vernacular expressions. My dear friends, vernacular is a word which is used for, let's say, the native place. The vernacular expressions means the expressions of your native place. Suppose you belong to India, then you must have some vernacular expressions when you speak into English language. If you belong to, let's say, Australia, you might be having that Australian cultural vernacular expressions into your language. So the example which I have used here is 2-3 days. Now generally these kind of phrases are not used by native speakers of English language, let's say Britishers. But then Indians use such kind of expressions 2-3 days into their English, and these phrases, friends, are very common, although they are not considered as the part of standard English or elite kind of English or formal English. But even then they are popularly uttered by the Indian English language speakers. Another example of literal translation with men also and ladies also is an unacceptable collocation used in literal translation of vernacular expressions. Friends, this is again one of the examples, one of the phrases which poet uses into his poetry, and which is, let's say, a very good example of vernacular Indian expression. The phrase is with men also and ladies also. Generally, in English language we say ladies and gentlemen, or let's say with the people present here. But here poet is using the phrase with men also and ladies also. It seems that poet want to discriminate between the men and ladies. Women word should come with men, or gents word should come with ladies. But poet has mixed the phrases. He is using the word men with the ladies, suggesting that this kind of collocation, this kind of grouping of words is unacceptable, although it is popularly used in the Indian society. Another way of unfolding parody is the way of not using indefinite articles. Well, friends, all of you know that the articles are divided into two categories. Indefinite articles are a, n, and definite article is the. But when Indians are speaking, they generally do not use indefinite article a, n in their sentences, in their phrases. And which is why poet Nassim Ezekiel has also omitted at various places in the poem these articles a and n from the speaker's statements. So, this is just a parody. The parody is unfolding about the Indian way of speaking sentences. We can look at it in the form of this poem, Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpatius. There are many other examples like very high family. Now, very high family, this is again an unacceptable phrase into English language, formal English language. The poet might have used any other phrase for this. Rather than very high family, he might have used elite family. But then he uses the word very high family, which is unacceptable. Then renowned advocate. Now this word also, renowned advocate, this phrase also is very uncommon into European countries. There is an absence of indefinite article a, like I told you, that this indefinite article a is missing. The phrase should be like a very high family. Now, very high family, poet uses in the monologue, but a is missing from the phrase. So, a must come there, but a is missing. Again, in the phrase renowned advocate, a is missing. So, in this way, we can understand that poet is intentionally doing all these experiments with Indian way of speaking English language. Miss Pushpa is laughed at and laughs at all the people. Now this is again a line used in the poem. And friends, if we do, let's say, write about someone in such a manner into European society, they might feel that one person is mocking on another person. But this is not the case. In the Indian context, they are basically trying to say smiling. But rather than smiling, they are using the word laughing. Now, laughing is definitely unacceptable in this situation, but poet is using this word laughing, which is inappropriate, although suggesting the vernacular expression of Indian English. Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpatius is a social satire on speech which is delivered on an occasion. Now, friends, we can say very confidently that this poem, Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpatius, it is a social satire. It is a satire on the so-called urban Indian society. They call themselves urban, they call themselves educated, but they are not actually. So, it is a social satire on such kind of people who deliver speeches on different occasions. Their speeches has lot of grammatical errors, their speeches had lot of sentence construction errors, unacceptable collocations, but even then they are habituate of using that kind of English language only. They praise the good-natured, helpful and sacrificial attitude and leadership qualities, etc. of the person in these kind of speeches. But friends, sometimes it happens that you want to appreciate someone, you want to appreciate the helpful and sacrificial attitude. A person has a sacrificing attitude, a person has a lot of, let's say, you want to give a lot of gratitude to that person. But sometimes the words and phrases do not make that kind of sense, and the person may feel offended if you use such kind of phrases. He describes the internal as well as the external beauty of Miss Pushpa as an Babu Angrezi. Now, this English can be called as Babu Angrezi. Now, this is an Indian phrase. Babu Angrezi means the kind of English which Europeans expected Indians to speak. So that kind of Babu Angrezi, which is not, let's say, formal, which is not appropriate, but confidently uttered by the Indian speakers who know little bit of English but not much. Nassim Ezekiel has not given a definite identity of the speaker. Speaker is unknown. There is no name of this speaker. He is someone from the group, he is someone from the crowd, but it is sure that he is known to Miss Pushpatius. We do not know whether it is a male or female speaker. Now this is also interesting. We can say that this is the skill of this poet Nassim Ezekiel, that nowhere in the poem we can understand from this monologue that the speaker is a male or a female. Nassim Ezekiel, by hiding the identity of the speaker, renders the mistake of every Indian in general. This can be one of the, let's say, hidden intentions of Nassim Ezekiel. He do not want to highlight that who is the speaker, male or female, because he think that these kind of mistakes are uttered by almost all the Indians who think that they are very proficient into English language communications, but they are actually not. The poem right from its first stanza makes fun at the way we speak English. The poem at one side is funny, at one side it has lot of fun, but on the other side it has satire also. It has a message to convey to the Indian people who speak very confidently in this Babu Angrezi, the English which is not correct, the English which is not right, but they do not actually know about it. They are innocent people. They don't know much about English language. In the first stanza, the speaker says that Miss Pushpa will depart in 2-3 days instead of 2 or 3 days. Now again, friends, depart is a word which we generally use for, let's say, flights, or we generally use for a person who is about to die or who died. But here this person is using the word depart for the leaving of Miss Pushpatius. This is a very hilarious kind of expression. Then rather than using 2-3 days instead of 2 or 3 days, this is again very difficult to understand, that why can't this person say 2 or 3 days? He simply says 2-3 days and skips the word or. Instead of saying that Miss Pushpa is kind-hearted and gentle woman, the speaker says that she is sweet, both internal and external. Again, a very offending kind of phrase for a female. But even then, the person is very innocent. The person don't know that how this phrase can be disastrous to the person to whom he is addressing. Rather than saying that she is kind-hearted, she is gentle woman, he says that she is, let's say, both internal and external. He wanted to say that from her outer behavior also, inner behavior also, she is what she want to say. Okay? She is not a hypocrite kind of person. In the same stanza, the speaker, instead of saying that Miss Pushpa is a pleasant looking woman, he says that she is smiling and smiling even for no reason. Now this is again a very offending phrase. In one way, he wished to say that Miss Pushpa is a very pleasant looking woman. She smiles very beautifully. But then he says that she is smiling and smiling, but without any reason. Now we can say that a mad person smiles without any reason. But here he is using this phrase with a positive spirit, that she always smiles, she is always happy, she is always cooperative, she is always gentle, she is always kind. But the way he expresses in this kind of language is not appropriate according to the occasion. While giving her family background, the speaker says that she comes from a high family for saying rich family. Again, a very difficult kind of phrase to understand in this situation. The person must have used rich family. Miss Pushpa is coming from a rich family, but he do not get the appropriate word because he is not proficient in English. So he says high family. The speaker says deviation while talking about Surat shows the Indianness. He uses the name Surat, which is one of the cities of the state Gujarat. Now these kind of, let's say, regional phrases are there in the poem, suggesting the Indianness, the Indian spirit which this person Nassim Ezekiel wanted to show from his poems. He remembers his past when he went to Surat to stay with one of his uncle's friends. The person share his experiences, the person who is the speaker, who is giving this monologue. He shares his experience of going to Surat and staying there with one of his relatives. Just now only I will do is again and committed by the speaker when he attempt to say that Miss Pushpa would do things within a minute. Just now only I will do. Now this phrase, what a person has to say, he want to say that Miss Pushpa is very quick in doing things. She is very fast in helping someone or completing the tasks which are assigned to her, but he is not able to use the appropriate words, and a mismanagement phrase is used by him in this, where he says just now only I will do. Just now only I will do, he want to say that immediately I will complete something, complete his speech or something else. To conclude, the poem is a parody of an Indian speech. It is a satirical of the manner of Indian educated people. Indian educated people, they think that they are speaking very appropriately, but they are actually not. So this poem is a parody. We can laugh, we can think about it seriously, but then we have to look at this poem as a parody of how Indians give their speech. There is a satire, pinch of satire, which is there about the Indian manners into this poem, about how educated people used to speak. The whole poem is a comic in nature. We feel very comic when we read this poem. We feel very, let's say, laughing when we read this poem. The speaker's word make us laugh. We feel, let's say, overjoyed. We feel very, let's say, different when we read this kind of poem. The parody includes irony, vague speech and literal translation, the use of present progressive tense and Babu English in the poem. When we read this poem, we see that there is a lot of irony. Irony means, irony is a tone. So there is ironic tone in the poem, which makes us humorous. There are vague speeches in the poem. There are some literal translations. Literal translations means the things which not to be translated from the regional language to the English language. And if they are translated, there must be a proper and formal translation. But the speaker was not able to do that because just now he gave that speech. There is a use of present progressive tense in this kind of Babu English. As I told you friends earlier also, that Nassim Ezekiel is habituate of using this present progressive tense, suggesting the Indian way of speaking, Indian way of using phrases. Although this present progressive is not appropriate into that situation, but the poet is intentionally using it to get a glimpse of the Indian way of speaking, the Indian speaking in English language. So, in this presentation, friends, we understood that how the poetic craftsmanship of this poet Nassim Ezekiel is clearly visible into this poem Goodbye Party for Miss Pushpatius. Friends, I told you before also that Nassim Ezekiel was a professor of English language. So do not demean his command over English language. Do not demean his proficiency over English language. But he is intentionally using this kind of language into this poem Goodbye Party, suggesting his poetic craftsmanship. So this is all for today. I thank you for listening this video. Thank you so much.